I'm glad to hear President Biden finally using his bully pulpit a little bit to try to wake people up that this is real. But he continues to expand fossil fuels at breakneck pace. He continues to permit more drilling on public lands at a pace even faster than Trump.
Golpearía en la mañana, golpearía en la noche, por todo el país, alerta el peligro.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. Want some motivation to come to the climate march and rally in New York City on Sunday, September 17th? How about a hurricane hitting Southern California? Half of Maui burning to the ground. Forests in the province of Quebec burning at 20 times the usual rate. If that's not enough, listen to the words of a climate scientist who works for NASA. He spoke recently, unofficially, on Democracy Now!
The public just doesn't understand, in my opinion, what a deep emergency we are in. This is the merest beginning of what we're going to see in coming years. And to me, it's absolutely horrifying. I don't think people really fully appreciate how irreversible these impacts are. We can't just reverse this. It's not like cleaning up trash in a park. How hot we allow this planet to get is how hot it will stay for a very long time. And I feel like climate scientists, including myself, have been being ignored for decades by world leaders. They just don't seem to get this either. I'm glad to hear President Biden finally using his bully pulpit a little bit to try to wake people up that this is real. But he continues to expand fossil fuels at breakneck pace. He continues to permit more drilling on public lands at a pace even faster than Trump, to approve the Willow Project in Alaska. He went out of his way to make sure that the Mountain Valley Pipeline, a natural gas pipeline in Virginia and West Virginia, was approved. He could have stopped that, but instead he's pushing to expand fossil fuels, and that's the cause of all of this damage that we're seeing. The deadly fires in Greece, in Maui a few weeks ago, the flooding that we've seen in Vermont this year, and Pakistan last summer that basically inundated most of the country. The record heat that we're seeing is going to get worse and worse. I feel like we are on the verge. These are very nonlinear changes, so it feels like they're increasing very quickly because they interact with society in very complex ways, and we're a lot more vulnerable than I think that most people think or thought quite recently. And so we could start seeing things like regional heat waves that end up killing 1 million people over the course of a few days.
Consider that last sentence again. We can start seeing things like regional heat waves that end up killing 1 million people over the course of a few days. Chilling. Our only hope is for people power to force change, something that's been lacking in recent years. If tens of thousands of people go to New York City for that march, that will be an excellent reboot of the climate movement. The march will start on Broadway between 54th and 57th Street at 1 p.m. Sunday the 17th. The march will go down 52nd Street and end with a rally on 1st Avenue and 50th Street. That, I guess, is as close to the UN as the authorities will allow. For more, go to peace.org, 350ct.org, or endfossilfuels.us. Palestine. If you recall, last week, we had this picture of a Palestinian detainee with a Jewish star imprinted upon his face. Now, the victim, Sheik Ali of Shuafat refugee camp in Jerusalem, has allowed a picture of his full face to be shown. The Israeli police deny he was branded and say The imprint resulted from the laces of one of the boots of the police who were sent to arrest him. 16 policemen, by the way. An article by Raouf Halabi in Counterpunch reported that Dr. Avner Rosengarten, the head of Israeli Forensic Science Institute, told the media that the markings were created by a metallic tool or instrument. First of all, the width of the laces is not suitable. Secondly, the laces can't leave this kind of imprint. As the edges of the wound are bleeding, it must be a solid instrument. Do remember that the six-pointed star is often scrawled by settlers on Palestinian buildings to terrify them, just as that other symbol was scrawled on German Jewish buildings nearly a century ago. A bit of good news. A British judge has found that two activists who blocked a road to a British division of Elbit, Israel's largest arms manufacturer, those two activists he found not guilty. The two were acquitted by Judge Grego. He found their actions were proportionate in comparison to the crimes against humanity which they were trying to stop. Judge Grego allowed evidence about those crimes into the record, something the judge in Tony Greenstein's case refused to do. He will be sentenced this month. A note, the excellent letter, An Elephant in the Room, about Israeli apartheid that was directed to leaders of the Jewish community in the United States. This letter has been now signed by over 2,100 people, and judging by the names, are overwhelmingly Israeli and American Jews. Saudi border guards have killed hundreds of Ethiopian migrants and asylum seekers trying to get into the kingdom via Yemen. That, according to a Human Rights Watch report looking at the period March 22 through June 23. The group says the real number could be over 1,000. The New York Times reported that the U.S. government knew about this since last autumn, but said nothing publicly, hoping they could convince the Saudis to clean house on their own. Was this a sensible strategy, Secretary of State Blinken? Did the Saudis clean house, dealing with the murderers of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi? Did the justice system even tell the family of Khashoggi what happened to his remains? Now for the rally for Syrians in Hartford, Connecticut on August 21st, 10 years to the day after the Assadist massacre of 1,400 people in Ghouta.
And they leave, we don't give them options to go check out another alternative.
We're going to start with Sham Karkour. She's a Syrian refugee and an incoming freshman at Harvard University. She will be discussing the potential that world has lost due to the tragic death of children who fell victim to the Assad chemical attacks in 2013. Marah Raslan, Yahya Abdeljawad Al-Rifai, Lin Al-Qatme, Abdurrahman Al-Qatme, Ala Faraj Qiblawi, Zaid Haytham Al-Tabbas. Those are the names of kids who were murdered by Bashar al-Assad due to him attacking various parts of Syria with chemical rockets. These names represent not only the children we mourn today, but also countless others who have suffered the same fate. It
anguish of their loved ones as they searched for a sign, a trace of their missing children. In a desperate attempt to keep track and identify them, these innocent souls were marked with numbers on their foreheads. It is a haunting reminder of the overwhelming scale of this tragedy and the profound impact it has had on countless lives. As we remember them, let us reflect on the future these children could have had. They had dreams, hopes, and an entire life ahead of them. They were deserving of the same opportunities that privileged children like myself often take for granted. They too had the right to grow, to learn, and to shape their own destinies. We must not forget that these children have rights. The right to a childhood free from fear and violence. The right to education, healthcare, and protection. But Bashar al-Assad and those responsible for these unspeakable acts of violence denied these children their fundamental rights. They robbed them of their innocence, their future, their potential, and their very existence. It is crucial for us to recognize that any one of us could have easily been in their place. The reality is that we were fortunate and privileged enough to escape such horrors and live our lives without constant fear and uncertainty. But we must not allow our privilege to blind us to the suffering of others. Instead, let it serve as a reminder of the responsibility we bear to stand up for justice and advocate for the rights of those who have been silenced. It is our responsibility to fight for their memory, to amplify their voices, and to work towards a future where every child can thrive and fulfill their potential. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Noor Al-Kaddoumi. She is the Vice President of Students for Justice in Palestine at UConn. She will be discussing or recounting the story of a survival of al-Assad chemical attacks in Syria, who woke up to a heart-wrenching realization that all of his family members had been killed.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to recount the story of Ibrahim al-Hussein Alatek, who was a mere 15 years old when the tragedy struck. Thank you. Okay. In the darkness of the night, while he and his family were peacefully sleeping, the regime unleashed an attack upon them, robbing him of his entire world. His father, mother, siblings, and extended family were all cruelly taken from him. At just 15 years of age, Ibrahim was forced to bear witness to suffocation of his loved ones from Syrian gas, one of the most toxic nerve agents that can cause death within minutes. A haunting memory that etched forever in his mind. A decade passed since that fateful night, and it is incumbent upon us to cast a spotlight on this horrific experience. The responsibility lies with us to hold the regime and its ally, Russia, accountable for the unspeakable tragedy.
Next, we will hear from Amina Al-Masri. She is a Syrian-American educator and a human rights activist. She will be shedding a light on the prisoners of al-Assad.
Ever since the revolution began in 2011, more than 300,000 detainees have disappeared in the regime's detention prison.
How much?
Pay attention to the number. 300,000 at least have disappeared in regime's detention prisons. Many detainees have died in Assad's prison as a result of starvation, disease, and torture. Over 15,000 innocent people were killed due to torture.
How many?
15,000 innocent people killed under torture. Many families saw their loved ones among the Caesar file, which had about 55,000 horrific photos. Today, I want to share two cases. We're trying to get some information about them. The first one, pay attention to the picture, please. This one is Rania al-Abbasi. This one, the first case is about Rania al-Abbasi. Rania is a successful dentist in Damascus, Syria. She's Syria's chess champion and a busy mother of 6 children. Dima, Intisar, Najah, Ala, Ahmed, and the littlest one here, Layan, all aged between 3 and 15. On March 19, 2013, March 19, 2013, the Syrian government agent came to her home and forcibly took her husband, Abdurrahman. 2 days later, they came back for Rania, her children, and even her secretary, Majdouline al-Qadi, who happened just to be there comforting Rania after she lost her husband, after he was arrested.
What was her crime?
The crime is just being at home, being a human, just comforting her friend. She was a young girl as well. No one has heard of them since. The Syrian regime has refused to give Rania's relatives any information about what happened to them or their whereabouts. It has been 10 long years for Rania's family.
Where are her children?
Can you take a look at the picture, please? Those kids are in Assad's prison. It's not any prison, it's Assad's prisons. 6 innocent children. Next case is very dear to me. It's a friend of mine. Her name is Maryam Kamilmaz. Her dad, take a look at his picture. His dad is an American citizen, Syrian American citizen, has been held captive in Syria since February 15, 2017. He was unjustly detained by Assad at a checkpoint during his last visit to Syria to help those who were affected. His family have not seen or heard from him since. I'm talking about 2017. There's no action. There was a little action and then it went silent. And the U.S. is not asking for him. He's an American citizen. Majd is a caring therapist, a wonderful humanitarian. He dedicated his life to the service of others by treating patients after natural disasters, including Hurricane Katrina, the tsunami in Indonesia. He even treated war victims in Kosovo and Bosnia. My friend Maryam is waiting for her dad, her family, his wife, his mother. He's the only child to his mother. Has been waiting 6 long years just to hear about any news about Majd. Here's what you can do. We have hashtag for free Majd, hashtag free Rania. I need everyone to visit these in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and tweet and share. Everybody has to hear their stories.
Free Majd, free Rania.
Free
The immediate release, here are our demands. The immediate release of those who have been unlawfully detained. Call on the Syrian regime and all those who may influence them to immediately release a list of names of all detainees along with their current location and status. That's something that you might think it's natural to know, but actually in Syria you don't know if he's dead, if he's alive, is he sick, is he not? We need to immediately stop torture.
Next we will hear from Nawal Kharoum, the Pakistan advisor at the United Nations and the founder of NIA Foundation, a non-profit organization that focuses protecting underprivileged children. She will be sharing her insights and observations from her work with the International Rescue Committee this summer. Hello everyone. Today I want to shed light on the lack of accountability surrounding the Syrian chemical attacks. The Syrian conflict has been marked by numerous instances of chemical attacks, resulting in unimaginable suffering for innocent civilians. However, what's even more distressing is the continued lack of proper accountability for these heinous attacks. Time and again, reports have emerged from international organizations and independent investigators pointing towards the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Despite these clear violations of international law, those responsible have escaped consequences. The United Nations and other international bodies have repeatedly called for accountability, demanding that those responsible for these attacks must be brought to justice. Yet the geopolitical complexities of the Syrian conflict have hindered effective action. Diplomatic impasses, conflicted interests, and challenges in verifying the sources of these attacks have all contributed to a frustrating cycle of inaction. Accountability is not just a matter of justice, it is essential for deterring future atrocities. When individuals or entities can commit such egregious acts without facing repercussions, it creates a dangerous precedent that endangers the principles of human rights and international law. It sends a message that these actions can be tolerated, emboldening the perpetrators and undermining the fabric of global security. As concerned citizens of the world, we must raise our voice against this lack of accountability. We must pressure our state governors to take strong stance in pursuing justice for the victims of chemical attacks. The lack of accountability for Syrian chemical attacks is not just a failure of the international system. It is a failure of our collective humanity. Let us remember that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. It is our duty to speak out, demand action, and ensure that those who perpetrate such atrocities are held accountable for their crimes.
My name is Reem Al-Hariri Khanner. I'm a board member of the Syrian American Council. I would like just to speak a little bit about advocacy. Through my work with the SAC organization, Syrian American Council, I realized that we all have a role in this. Small or big, we can do something. This month, August, is the month that our representatives are actually in district, which means if they're here to hear from you. So if you can email your representative, or you can call their office demanding a callback or an email, so they know that you care about Syria, and you can ask them, what are you doing in the capital for Syrian refugees or Syrian detainees? This is really important, and we sometimes through the Syrian American Council we find that the power of emailing one office could change their decision on the capital. So it's really important that we mobilize our efforts, even if there's 20, but those 20 can amplify the work with our representative.
This is the photo of Abdullah al-Khatib with a picture of his brother who was murdered in 2011 in Dara. That was the spark that set off the Syrian uprising, which is not over. Some excellent news. Demonstrations, which started a couple of weeks ago in Syria against Assad, the bravest of which is in Ghouta, in a Druze area of southern Syria controlled by Assad. The people here are waving the multicolored Druze flag. This tweet reads, "Trash collection day in Ghouta." I'm sure you get the point. This video is from another part of Syria, in Al-Bab, where they are waving the three-starred Free Syrian flag. In recent weeks, we've been talking about the upcoming free showings of the film The Resurrection of Victor Jara that will be taking place in New Haven on September 11th. Here's a trailer for the film.
Tenemos entendido que este es el camarín donde mataron a Víctor Jara.
Para crecer, estréchala tu hermano. Juntos iremos.
There were a certain community of singers and songwriters and performers all around the world who were trying to make a difference.
He was, in a sense, the Woody Guthrie, the Pete Seeger, that heart and soul of the musical enterprises that were going on in Chile.
Si tuviera un martillo, golpearía en la mañana, golpearía en la noche, por todo el país, alerta al peligro.
John Suma, the film's maker, will be at both showings. The first at the Adante Student Center at Southern Connecticut State University at 1 p.m. and later that day at 6:30 at Fairhaven Middle School. Both venues are in New Haven. Both showings are free. Here's a bit of an interview I did with John Suma this August. Who was Victor Jara?
Well, Victor Jara was an activist as well as most notably a singer-songwriter and an actor previously and theater director. So he went from doing theater to focusing exclusively on performing as a singer-songwriter. That transition came about before Allende came to power. He was already widely considered to be just an outstanding singer-songwriter. He wasn't a very good actor, but he was a good theater director, and he was actually an excellent music director. So he directed the legendary groups Inti Imani and Quilapayún. I'm sorry, he directed Quilapayún and collaborated with Inti Imani. So he was older than those artists, so he had a little, extra age to advise them and direct them and give them some structure and some added sort of producer, director kind of perceptions of how they were playing and what they should do to become very successful. So that's captured in the film. We explore that dimension up close.
You can watch the whole interview with Suma on our YouTube channel. Quickest way to get to it is to turn on your cell phone, put it in camera mode, and point it at this QR code. The link will show up. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.